Most people think they lose it in the moment, they lose control in the moment. But actually, if you look closely, the reaction often started long before you notice it. And that changes everything. Think about a moment you regret, a conversation or a meeting or a message. Same old, someone says something, and suddenly your whole system reacts. Perhaps not dramatically, perhaps subtly, but you feel it in the body. Could be a tightening in the chest, or tension in the jaw, or pressure building up in the stomach. And then almost immediately, something starts to feel not right. It's not yet a big emotion, just a tone, unpleasant, threatening perhaps, or irritating, or feeling exposed. And that's usually the moment that we miss. Because what happens next feels completely justified, most often. The mind starts moving, explaining, defending, preparing, correcting. Basically, you're trying to regain control. So you might replay the situation or conversation, and figure out what they meant. You imagine what to say back. And then you stop listening in the moment. You start reacting internally. And then by the time you notice that, well, the reaction already has momentum. And then afterwards you think, of course, why did I do that? But by then, you're already downstream. That's the strange part. Most people only become aware once the reaction becomes visible. Once the tone changes. Once the email is sent, perhaps. Once the withdrawal starts. Once the argument is already happening. But what we call the moment is actually quite late in the process, because the reaction began earlier. At the level of tension, feeling, discomfort, resistance. That small moment where the body quietly says, something is not okay here. And from there, the mind automatically tries to move away from the discomfort. By controlling, explaining, avoiding, defending, shutting down effectively. So that's a different strategy. Same movement, but a different strategy. So the practice is not becoming emotionless, is not suppressing reactions, is not pretending to be calm. What you want to do is learn to notice change earlier than the thought, earlier than the story in your mind, earlier than the behavior in which it manifests, right? Because if you can notice that first contraction, bodily sensation, even briefly, there's already space. Perhaps not a lot initially, but enough to not completely disappear into the reaction. Enough to stay present while it's happening. Enough to not automatically go with the next impulse. Now, most people understand themselves only after the moment. But the training is to start seeing it during the moment. And doesn't have to be perfectly. Doesn't have to be every time. Doesn't work like that. But slowly but surely, you notice it sooner, because the earlier awareness appears, the less force, the less momentum the reaction has. And then eventually you realize you didn't actually lose control in the moment. You just noticed the chain too late.